let's get started. Yes, you can sit wherever. So I hope everybody got the handouts and signed in. If you didn't sign in, you can do it before you leave. And you should have one thing that looks like this, which is my little survey form, which I did not bother to cut in half. So there's 2 questions to answer before we get started, super quick. And then at the end, if you just quickly answer the others. And then I also have this low literacy tip sheet, which unfortunately did not print back and front. And so you should have 2 pages of that, and you can grab those at the back too if you don't have them. Okay, so I am going to get this rolling. I think I know everybody in here. I'm Robin, and I am doing this particular training because my background is all in writing and editing, and I actually spent 6 years writing for a medical website where my one and only job was to take really complicated medical journal articles and write them for anywhere from a 4th to an 8th grade level, depending on the particular website I was writing for. It was all for orthopedic surgeons. And so in that time, it was a giant crash course in learning what low literacy writing meant and why you would write for a low literacy audience and the quick and dirty ways to make it happen. So that is where the background comes from for this. And I actually got really passionate about it at that time because I learned a lot about what it means to be a person who's low literacy and so why it's important. And so as I'm going through all of this, I just want you to know that my main goal that I would have for this is that everybody comes out of it with a little more knowledge and confidence and understanding, and so can just put together the kind of really inclusive documents and writing, whether it's for a website or forms or whatever, that makes it just so much more accessible to the public and will probably look and read better while we're at it. So that's my hope. And interrupt me for questions because this will be a lot better and a lot smoother if I'm not just droning on and I'm finding out what you guys are interested in. So, all right, so here we go. So why does low literacy writing matter? We communicate with low literacy people all the time, but we absolutely don't know it. There's different study. This is a ridiculously exhaustively researched field, and it's amazing how many people. There's different definitions of what low literacy means. So it ranges anywhere from 1/3 of the people to up to half. I mean, that really people cannot connect well with the written word, and most of us who tend to be completely comfortable with the written word just forget that. It's easy to forget. So, and most low literacy readers think that they read just fine. They have learned a million coping strategies. The world seems completely open to them. They don't know what they're missing. So it's up to us to make that connection. All right, and this is what I learned a lot while working for the orthopedic surgeon websites, is that a lot of their patients are people who are perfectly smart people. They might have gone, and a lot of them are there because they've operated jackhammers their entire life or something, and they need a lot of medical care. And what I discovered about this patient group is they often had perfectly good, most of them graduated from high school, some of them went to college. They often read just completely fine through all of their lives, but reading is a skill, it's just a skill. And so they went to high school, graduated from high school, did fine, got into a physical field where they worked hard all their life. Reading was not one of their hobbies, so it's a skill that they lost. I used to be really good at math in high school. I am not really good at math anymore. I could maybe get it back, but I'm probably not going to. So it's not dumbing it down. You don't have to dumb anything down. You just have to write it at a level that is easier and faster to grasp. And one thing you should know is that low literacy readers read really differently than people who are really fluent with language. We tend to very quickly scan large bits of text and be able to figure out exactly what's there. Generally speaking, low literacy readers have to read word by word, which makes it, just out of necessity, it's going to be really literal, your interpretation, and it's going to be really hard to jump from that. If you're referring to something in a whole nother section, it's hard to jump back and forth in your mind because you didn't read it as a giant chunk. You read it as a word by word. So that's just something to keep in mind, and it's the kind of basis of why a lot of this writing works the way it does. Okay, so there's 2 parts to creating a good low literacy document. One is the writing and the content, and the other part of that is the design. So we're going to start with the writing because that's almost always where you start when you write something. You sit down with a blank Word document and you start to write. And I was going to make you a nice checklist, and then I found this nice checklist, so I just stuck it in here. And I'll email a copy to you after the training because I think this is a nice, concise way to go about this. CDC actually has this Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry actually has some surprisingly great low literacy stuff. And I say surprisingly because I was researching to try to find some documentation for you. There's some stuff on writing, stuff that's easy to read that's like 168 pages long. It's unbelievable. I just think they're kind of missing the point. It's actually really funny the more you get into it, but and they're written very well. They're just unbelievably long. So anyway, they have some good short stuff, and this was the best short take on it that I saw. So I'm just going to go through this kind of step by step. This part, this organized to serve the audience, is I think the absolute most important part, and it can actually save you time. The most important thing that you need to do is know your audience and know your purpose before you get started. I think the purpose is the most important thing. It's like, what are you trying to do with this thing? Because every agency does this. I think the health department in particular, and probably most government or nonprofit agencies do it, where we don't get to print out that many brochures, so let's try to slam everything in there that we can. Let's get it all in one place. Let's make it an all-purpose document, which basically means it's not going to work for any particular purpose. It's way better to have one purpose and stick to it, and that's really important for your low literacy audiences because they need to absolutely have a super clear handle on what it is you're trying to get across so that as they read word by word, they can tie it all back to that one message. So if you know your audience, and sometimes you know your audience and you know your audience is not low literacy. You're writing for the Board of Health, you're writing for the City Council, fine, that's fine. You don't have to do everything you do with low literacy stuff in mind. Although I do think these guidelines can help you create a much kind of snappier, easier to grasp document. But if you know your audience, you know it's the general public, or you don't really know your audience, you know it's something you could use in a lot of different venues, then it's a great idea to really work hard on the low literacy parts of your writing. So one message, know your audience. And then the most important message goes first, which sounds so obvious and happens so little. I mean, I'm always rearranging my own writing and be like, oh yeah, this is what I really want them to get out of it, plonk, let's put it up at the top. It kind of works like a funnel. I mean, you kind of naturally write a little bit general to specific, but you really have to do that in low literacy writing. You funnel them into what the specifics are. Start with the broad. And part of that is because some readers read so poorly that it's hard. It's going to take them a long time. So they'll read your first paragraph and they're probably not going to read anymore. So knowing that, put your most important information there. And then break it into logical chunks. We do that, just using headings and subheadings smartly. And write it in the active voice. As you write, it's so much easier to grasp sentences that use the active voice. And it's partly because it becomes impossible to write them with, those long verb strings that is happening to take place in, that just happens when you write with a passive voice. Shorter sentences and paragraphs are very helpful. And go ahead and use you and other pronouns. We're kind of taught in academic writing not to do that, not to use you or I or we, but that's how we talk all the time. And it helps you cut to the chase and use the active voice so much more. And then things like headings and text boxes can make things easier to find. Can also make it harder depending on how you do it, but we'll talk about that in design. Really go through and edit hard, delete unnecessary words, sentences, and paragraphs. It doesn't matter how many times I've written for low literacy audiences now, I write my first draft and think I've done great, and I go back and immediately find, tons of stuff I can take out, or that I can say more simply. And creating lists and tables. Lists and tables are great. Long strings of lists or instructions in a paragraph are absolutely so hard to go through. So checklist is great. Table is great, anything that really can kind of visually show it so that they don't have to plow the words so hard. So how do you know when you've done a good job with your writing? This is another exhaustively researched field. field of readability testing. There's something like 120 different ways to measure readability, and most of them start off with saying things like, this is a very simple system. Count every 20th line, count the syllables in the line, divide by 0.6, multiply by 0.35, and then you have your readability level. We're not going to do that, but there's a lot of ways out there. Your handout actually has a couple websites that have good and easy readability tests where you can just cut and paste stuff into that. But even easier, if you get it set up, is word readability testing. Where you find that is on the review tab up there, where you get the spelling and grammar check. You run the spelling and grammar check, and it kicks out at the end of it this lovely readability statistics box, which this is the summary of what you have. It uses what's called the Flesch-Kincaid system. So that it has these two matter the most: the reading ease, which is 48 on this one, and the Flesch-Kincaid grade level, which is 9.7. The reading ease is from 0 to 100, with 100 being super easy and 1 being so dense that none of us could make it through. You're supposed to shoot for 70 and over. That's the guideline. The grade level is just what it says. It's an estimate at a grade level, but you can plug this same document into about 14 different things, and they'll come out slightly different. So these things are just guidelines. They are not the be-all, end-all, but they give you an idea of where you're at. And then when you look at that, like if I were writing this, I would say, and Linda, in fact, did say this. She said, I think I'd like to make this a little better. What can I do? That's when you look at, okay, I've got 40% passive sentences. I bet I can make that better. Maybe 13 is too many words a sentence, stuff like that. So you start to kind of take a look at the different pieces, then that can give you some guidelines on how to go back and fix it up. And one thing to be aware of on all these tests, though, they do not handle lists well as good as lists are supposed to be. So you still have to use your own judgment. This is just a guide to help you out. But if you have a long list, it's going to give you a higher score. And there's some documents where you've got like a couple words that are really tricky, long words, but they're pretty much words that everybody knows, or they're words that you have got to use in this particular document for it to make any sense. And in that case, it's going to kick your readability level up, and just know that that's what's happening and don't worry about it. So just use it for your own information. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Would you suggest taking out the list and then checking it?
Sometimes you can do that. Yeah, I've done that before on especially tricky documents. But if you're talking about getting it from a 6th grade level to a 5th grade level, you probably just go like, no, I can look at this and I know that this is okay. So it depends on how worried you are about the document. You can always run it by me too if you need to. I'm happy to do that kind of stuff.
You're saying that readability, you want it to be a little bit higher. I think, were you saying that? Right?
This reading ease one, for some reason, 100 is the best. And
so the best
reading ease. You can read it the easiest at 100, yeah. I know, I find that scale odd too.
That word, though, like that must-use word that most people know, but maybe it's a little bit longer, that would bring your...
It would kick your grade level and your... It would kick the grade level up and the reading ease down.
Okay.
See, I wish they didn't do that. I wish they had that scale flipped. So it just is going to make your scores look worse, whichever one you're deciding to kind of go with. And then you just kind of have to use your own judgment. So.
Does it tell you what word is too difficult?
No, it doesn't. But it's only, it's a dumb system. It's just counting letters and stuff. It's really going by syllables and, so that's where your own brain has to come in with kind of knowing what you're doing. And it's not automatically set up on most people's Macs or on most people's computers to do this readability statistics review. So what you have to do is go to File Options, choose Proofing, and then the two things that are important down here are that you check grammar with spelling and show readability statistics. And unfortunately, that means you have to go through the entire spelling and grammar check every time you want to check what you've done, which is annoying. It used to be just under word count. You would just hit word count and it would give you this automatically. So if you were going through and changing and doing it, you wouldn't have to do all that, but you're kind of stuck with that now. But anyways, so those are the two. And if you guys want information about that, I can, or forget how to do it, I will send you the link or whatever. Okay, so that's it for writing. Questions, thoughts, anything? All right. So now we'll be on to the design, which is honestly, I was trying to think which was more important, and I was thinking it has to be the writing, but I think the design is just as important, which we kind of all should know from websites, because you can get on a website that's written beautifully and is so hard to navigate because you just cannot figure out where to read first or what leads to what. You know, there just doesn't seem to be any internal logic about it. So really what you're doing with design for low literacy audiences is that you are creating an internal visual logic for your document. And you can do that if it's a letter too. Obviously a letter's pretty simple to do it with, but it's just worth thinking about even for a simple letter. For sure you need to think about it on a form or a website, and absolutely if you're doing a poster or a brochure or something you're gonna hand out. So there's lots of different pieces to this. Fonts, text justification, headings and subheads, layout, illustrations, and color, which for some reason aren't on that slide. Let's see. So we'll start with fonts, which of course seems super simple, but there's all these different components of it, and I don't think I'm alone in this, but when I sometimes design stuff, I can spend so much stupid time playing around with different fonts to try to make it look better, and we don't have a lot to work with, so it can be quite a time waster for me. Okay, so body fonts, the body text, the main text. Yes, pretty simple, huh? Notice that there's been a lot of talk about sans serif or serif fonts. Do people know what that means? No? Okay, so this little fancy edge here on these words is called the serif. So those are ones that have like just those little extra tags on the letters. These down here, nothing, they're just clean straight lines. Those are sans serif. And there's also a ridiculous amount of research on what's easier to read, serif or sans serif. And there's a lot of people who have the idea that this is cleaner and easier, that it's going to be easier for low literacy audiences to read. Actually, this is somewhat easier. The reason being that there's no words on this one that have any of the below the line, like a G or something. I'll fix that for the next time. But when you have a shape of a word to read, it's easier to read it when it gives it a shape. So if you have a G that's hanging down or little marks off the edge of it, it kind of it's a shape that your eye recognizes over time. And so these basically give your eye more to recognize on the letters. So then the no's, the ones that are absolute no's, are the ones that are really make those shapes difficult, really difficult for. Well, sometimes they make it really difficult for anybody. I think we've all seen script types that you can't even make out. But so these all have the kind of shape of words that are hard to read, including all capitals, because nothing hangs down or sticks up. It's all very blocky. And so it just takes a lot of extra effort, especially if you're going to read a big body of text like that. So headline fonts, pretty much the same idea. You can get a little fancier, but still keep it pretty simple. And there is nothing at all wrong with just keeping the same font for your headlines and your text, just making it bold. The rule of thumb is to use two different one for the headlines and the body text. And that's fine if you can find one that work together nicely and aren't cluttery, and no more than 3. All right, so what are we on now? Oh yeah, the font combos. I just talked about that simple font combos are the best way to go. As you look around, you'll be surprised to find ones that have so many fonts. Newsletters are terrible for that. They just decide to put every font possible everywhere. So think about that when you're doing a newsletter. And that's everywhere. That's not just here for sure. Font size does matter. Again, it's that funnel, just like writing from general to specific. You start with the title, subhead a little bit smaller, and then text a bit smaller still. And the recommendation is like 11 to 14 is kind of an optimum size for reading ease of the body text. A couple points bigger, a couple points bigger. And that's just, you can eyeball that. There's no hard and clear rules on that. But it definitely shows your structure. It does funnel your reading down from here down to here. It just makes it really clear. All right, so bold, italic, and underline. Bold is great for titles and subheads, the occasional emphasis in text, and sometimes in a box or pull quote. Italic is great for emphasis in text, sometimes in a box or pull quote. Underlining, you really, if you could possibly avoid it, do, because again, the underlines really start to mess up with the words that hang below the line, and they get really tricky to read. Of course, there's exceptions to all this. You should just use it, you'll know, your eye will know. Just know that you should use it less often, sparingly, because then you really make a point with it. You say, this word's important, or this thing I want you to read. Let's see. I'm missing my page. So headings are great. Use them, again, for that funnel thing. They just chunk up your text nicely and pull you down right into your writing if you kind of set them up nicely. And you also just give them, they're like signposts, basically. They give you the idea of this is where we're going, and this is what all this text is about, which also helps if a low literacy reader needs to go back afterwards. Then they can use those as those signposts. It's like, I remember I read this, oh, this is my section, because it's a nice short headline that tells me what to do. So layout and illustrations. When you're laying out any kind of poster or brochure or flyer, simple is good. It sometimes feels more boring and feels less fun to put together a super simple newsletter, but it's really important if you want to if you want it to be really readable, that your design and your layout doesn't get in the way of a low literacy reader, and that it actually helps them read through it. So this one, okay, here's the headline. You got your text and more information down here. And then as far as the steps to take, it's a nice box that kind of shows them, it's like, this is what I want you to do, and here's how you can do it. There's nothing particularly wrong with this, but you've got illustrations that don't, we assume, fit the big issue, because unless it's about punctuation, there's no way it could. And where do you go first? It's really hard to tell in a layout like this, where do you read? What's important? What's the most important? And where is this message, and where is the most important thing I need to get? It would have you jumping all over. And honestly, for a low literacy reader, they tend to look at stuff like this and just not. They just don't bother. So it's not even that it's hard to read. It might be written super, super well, but it's not going to happen.
I realize it's a different goal, but if you're making a flyer, you want it to be eye-catching. What about the color? Is that distracting if you put two colors on your...
Good question. Such a nice lead in. It isn't necessarily distracting, and it can be great. One thing I would say is don't try to use color that makes sense. If you're writing about water quality, maybe you'd use blue, but maybe not. You can get ridiculous with that too. But if I had put yes in red and no in green, it just doesn't give you a visual cue that helps you. It doesn't necessarily hurt you, but you could actually use the color to help in that case. You want to use the color to kind of, chunk off a piece that is actually important, that you want people's eyes drawn to, not the piece that's just decorative, stuff like that. So it's just thinking about it. And then a lot of it's just logistical. It's like, are you going to print this out in black and white ever? Because if you do, still fine to use color, but you make sure it works in black and white. Because there's a lot of documents. In fact, there's one thing I was editing recently. It's like, God, I can't figure out how, what section are they talking about here? And it turns out there was a graphic that had something highlighted that in color it looked perfect. It was beautiful. It was so easy to see. But in black and white, it just blended in with the gray of the box behind it, and I couldn't see it at all. So check it. Always check your color and always think about how you're going to use it. And sometimes you can, depending on how you're going to use it, you might, I've done things where you take a version and then you create a black and white version of exactly the same thing, so that you have one you can email out for people to print out themselves and one that you print. So.
What about the color of the actual paper? I was learning about those with dyslexia, and that color paper is actually helpful for them to distinguish words and that kind of thing. I don't know if you know about that at all.
And I tried to look at some of the research on that, and I couldn't figure out, I feel like if we knew that there was a color or something that really helped, it would be great, but I didn't find anything in particular. So I don't know.
And I don't, this might
Yeah,
be
I wish
weird,
I
but
knew.
in teaching context, we would take colored overhead
Yes.
sheets and lay them on
Mhm.
the paper for
And was
people
it-
to read, but
Was it usually yellowish?
I can't remember now.
Yeah, I know, because I just know a little kid that has that, and she has to do the same thing on computers. There's some kind of filter that she has to use, and it seems to make it look yellow, but I'm not sure. So, yeah, I don't know. And is it the contrast? Is that the thing that makes
So
it?
I think the white is quite glaring. And
Yeah.
So that the font doesn't.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, is that as long as you have good sharp contrast, which is one of the other reasons for using a good sharp font, one that is not as flowy or maybe sometimes not as interesting, but it's that helps that contrast and gives you something to anchor onto. One thing I didn't talk about in here is text justification, but text justification it can be important. Ragged right, this one you can't see as much, but it's clearly not justifying, is way easier for your mind to flow to the next line than when you use the justified. Justified is actually really difficult because it puts really odd spacing in there. So like that whole thing about being able to scan something goes away. And especially if you're writing short line lengths, you can end up with some really odd looking lines. So if possible, avoid the justified text. And sometimes, usually if you have it so it's lined up over here and it's ragged on the left, that's for a specific reason that fits the layout. I mean, people just don't tend to do that. And centering it sometimes works fine, but you got to be careful about where your lines end. If it's better to revert to the just basic ragged right as much as you can. So.
Meaning that it doesn't cut the word off, it puts a whole word on a line.
Yeah, when you center, sometimes, it's not so much that it cuts it off, but you might have this, and then this one word text would be right in the middle. So it's just kind of an odd thing to look for, and you don't flow as well like this. You really do flow left to right, and especially when you're talking about some of your readers who have learning disabilities, that's not a real inborn skill anyway. So help them instead of hurt them. Just not make their eye have to go all over the page.
What about people who are colorblind? What colors go?
Oh, I never even thought of that. I never thought at all.
My dad was red-green.
So-
He can't distinguish between them.
So you can
a light with him one
Uh-huh.
time.
So is there anybody colorblind here that do you still see stuff on the page? Okay, I mean, I'm assuming it doesn't make anything really disappear, just maybe makes the contrast different. What? Just goes grayscale? Okay, all right, then I guess we're good. So the contrast is good. All right, so now we're going to use some real world examples from the health department, all of which are used with permission, all of which are perfectly good documents in their original state, but I had people approach me and say, let's make them better. And so in part of doing that, we looked at writing them for a low literacy audience. So I'm going to put them up. We'll talk about them a little bit, and then we'll show you what we did. And I'm going to start off with Linda's anthrax sheet that we saw earlier. This was for a drill at the post office, right?
Right.
As if anthrax had been detected by their machine there, and so all of the emergency services had to handle that situation correctly.
Yeah, and we had to prophylax everybody in the building.
Yep. Okay. So Linda wrote this sheet as part of her duties that was going to be handed out to everybody in the building who was going to have to get this.
Fill in the mouth.
Yep. So this is where we started, this anthrax fact sheet. Have some thoughts about what you might do to make it even, and I'll tell you, it starts out at a 9.7 grade level and a reading ease of 48. Any thoughts at all about, and Lindy, it's no fair because you know what you did to make it better. But anybody else, any thoughts?
There's a lot of words, and
Mhm.
I'm sure all of it, I haven't read it all, but
Mhm.
it's just a lot of words.
Mm-hmm.
Starting paragraphs.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts about?
Start your 10-day at the top.
Yeah, because that's really, I mean, if they don't come away with anything else, that's what you want them to come away with.
And maybe, I don't know, I don't like the inconsistency in cap and
Mhm.
cap.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to know how much touched on that they have to know.
Mhm.
They have to know bacillus, whatever.
Yeah,
And-
some of the longer terms.
Yeah.
Biodetection system, how important is that? And it's fine, people you write this way your first draft all the time, and you have to go back through and figure out, okay, what really is important. Low literacy writing is great for that. It really makes you hone in on what the important pieces are. So here's what we did. Here's what we came up with. This one ended up with a grade level of 5.7 and a reading ease level of 72. And what Linda talked about doing is, again, we moved this to the top, that if they don't read anything else, that's the important thing. Changed some fonts, shortened it a bit, made the font a bit bigger. The margins came in so that it wasn't just wall-to-wall text. And what Linda decided is she wanted to have all this information here because she didn't want a ton of freaked out people calling about this stuff. She wanted to give them at least the option of finding out about it on this sheet. So rather than making something really short, we just shortened every single one of these up and took out most of those kind of bigger terms that probably weren't that important. And if they want to know things at that level, they're going to have to call that number up at the top. So a pretty simple fix.
Putting a link on it.
You could put a link on it. The one thing that's interesting about like just putting links on stuff in this, if it's electronic, it's a great thing because they can just click on it. If it's in writing, the chances that somebody's going to sit down and type that into a document are slim. And I think I'm like most people where I just sit down and I Google Missoula City County Health Department or emergency prep or something. So think about how you're sending it out. But if you're sending it out electronically, for sure, that would be a great thing to put in there.
I just don't know if I'd want to get all the questions, all the phone calls.
Yeah. Well, I think in these kind of cases, you just are gonna.
You want them.
Yeah. Well, especially because the people that are getting this need to do something.
Right.
So you're gonna be finding them anyway.
And one of the situations there is that the machine takes 90 minutes to get a positive on the anthrax, so you can have employees that went home and the post office locks up down and won't let those employees back. So if you can get information to them somehow so that they can call somebody because they need to go in somewhere else. But it was an interesting project.
So that's part of how just knowing your purpose for the document really helps you decide what you need to do with it.
Robin, we did a quality improvement project with one of our permit applications. Well, it ended up being about the permit application. We all know what QI is. But, we asked a lot of people that were filling the application out because they were just typically very incomplete, and I'm sure it was terrible layout. But we had a box that was kind of in that same position that asked really important basic questions about, will my septic system meet this, 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 and this? And there's probably 5 things in there, and people always skipped it. And we asked why, and they said,
because
a
it's
lot
up
of
there?
times, and they,
Yeah.
because it was in a box, and so they were so used to things in a box being for department use only that
Oh,
they
interesting.
and so now I'm
That's
probably just
interesting.
being
Well,
very
no, it might have made
specific
sense.
about it.
Anthrax facts could have been up top, and that could have been right below it, and not in box. There's a lot of options.
I
And
just feel like the box thing has thrown people off, and so I try not to. I love the way this looks clearly, but
well, and it's hard to know because a fact sheet versus a form, is that different? Who knows? And that's where if you have time and it's something you're going to be using over and over, do usability tests. It's great. I mean, the problem with doing it for low literacy is you can't say, hi, how well do you read? Oh, great, you're a bad reader. Would you look at this? You just can't do that. But you can give it to a colleague who knows nothing about whatever it is you're doing, or somebody completely outside the health department, or if you just happen to have a client that you feel like you could ask to do it, fine. But generally speaking, it's hard to usability test for low literacy. But you can still get an idea of where people, because they can talk, what you do in a usability test is you say, okay, talk to me as you're looking at this, what do you see? And so they might, if they start to be like, okay, anthrax facts, whatever, you're like, holy cow, they skipped the box, we got to do something about that. Why'd you skip the box, And so you can find those kinds of things out. But now that makes me curious. I wonder if that would be the same on something like
I
this.
didn't really connect that was a fill-in form. So, I mean, each
Well,
person
which
that
is your-
skipped it, we would ask them.
Yeah.
I guess I just assumed it was
Yeah.
for me because it was cordoned off.
Yeah, but you could be exactly right. That could be a terrible way to do it. Who knows? It would be worth finding out.
It's also in a lot of documents a side note.
Yeah, yes, it can be used that way.
Yeah.
And some of the ways you might do that is you could still do your box, but you put it somewhere different, or you could do a box or have it in different type or a different color, who knows what. And but you could have a headline on that said, read this first, or please read, or something, anything, just really short and to the point.
Let's look at the rule for meeting the low literacy qualifications here. With going 10 and under, you're supposed to spell it out, and then 10 and above, you would actually just put the number.
That's more, that's general style rules, like for just writing in general. So people are used to that. It's a good idea to follow it. However, there are times when it makes sense to just every number make a number, because especially if it's a checklist, eat 5 fruits and, sometimes it's easier for people to grasp. That's really dependent on your layout and your audience. So, but the general rule is write out a number under 10 and up, you put as a number. So if you follow that in general, that's kind of best. That's best. It's best to follow it in general, but realize that there will be times to break it and you'll have to use your own judgment.
It can seem awkward sometimes, breaking the rule. All the board minutes that I do for the 3 boards, because many of the members on the boards are very involved in their professional lives and reading technical documents. They want all the numbers to be in numeral form rather than spelled out. And you go through all your training that tells you to follow, as Robin has said, and it looks awkward and you want to change it, but then they'll read the minutes, and one in particular who is a professional editor for professional publications will constantly be prompting me to put it back into a numeral form. So I think, as Robin says, you have to really know your audience and kind of what they're looking for.
And one thing that happens is that can be awkward, especially if you're giving instructions, is that if you have a list and everything involves a number, like take 2 of these, use 3 of those, use 11 of these, and suddenly you use a number, it's kind of weird sometimes too. So that's a judgment call.
The other thing that I think on the original it was like, or not that I did, but what I was taking information from, it was 72 hours. And I thought, oh, yes, right. 24 into 72.
Yeah, exactly.
So we went with the 3
days. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and in general, when you use numbers, do that. Use the simplest units of time or measure or whatever, so that people can grasp it quick and aren't fighting with that in addition to the reading or understanding the concept or whatever. Same thing with acronyms. Oh boy, really try not to use them if you possibly can. Sometimes it's better to write out a somewhat long title of something 4 times than to use an acronym. That's a little bit of a judgment call too, but often you can just say the health department or the doctor or whatever, instead of having to do any agency name.
There again, I can tell you, not all of you get exposed to this, but some of you are writing different documents that the board ends up looking at. One of the 3 boards or another will end up looking at. And one of their pet peeves is our constant use of acronyms for all kinds of terms with no glossary or else within the text itself. Nothing that explains what the acronym is. So even something like BMI, they're always prompting, please get staff to explain what the acronym stands for.
That's your highly academic audience, which can be much worse to write for than your low literacy writing. All right, so now we're going to look at this nutrition services brochure for the 5210 campaign, which is a national campaign. Rebecca Morley had, I think, put this together and had been using it for some time when Mary Pittaway, they needed to print a bunch more, and she said, let's go do some kind of a review and update it and do a low literacy version of this brochure. So I worked with Rebecca to make this happen. So I'm going to show you, you'll have to imagine this as a trifold, but I'm going to show it to you. 2 different slides. Just look about it and think about it, and then we will talk about it after that. And I'll let you know ahead of time that the grade level was 7.6, not bad. Reading ease was 58, so getting there. And this is what it looked like. So this would be the first thing you would see when you'd open it up. That would be that fold in there, and this would be on the back. This was the inside. Very colorful, and I mean, a lot of people are told, like, make it colorful, make it engaging, make it fun. And she followed those. All right, so let's start with just the cover. Thoughts about the cover, what might be changed to make it more easily graspable?
The font, and it's too much
Mm-hmm.
words.
Mm-hmm. Too much words.
It's in caps.
Mm-hmm.
All caps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Academic is italicized and it's.
Right. Any other thoughts?
What do you think about turning off a lot of the words like help your child grow and just stop?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Child with obesity has become an epidemic, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Yep, absolutely. Those are exactly the right kinds of things. I will show you what we did, and I'll explain, kind of talk you through why some of them. Same thing, cut off some of those words. Cut out this entirely because what was the point of this brochure? The point was to help parents go home with this 5210 message. It was entirely about the 5210 message, which itself is kind of a low literacy strategy to get it so that you can remember what it is you're shooting for. It's simple, it's something you can remember, 5210. So taking a simple message and really like trying to broaden it out, and let's give you does a parent really need to know how many kids are obese in Missoula County or just their kid? You know, that's questionable, or how many, not really. The other thing, some of the stuff for design, this is clearly stock art. Unless there's a great reason for using it, don't. It needs to be super specific. At least it does fit the theme of the brochure, so that's good. And then the other thing, you have color kind of working against your message here. This is a logo that you get from the 5210 people, but eat is blue and so is exercise. Limit, that works, but reduce 5, you know, so it's subtle, but you're working against yourself. So here's what the final looked like. I'll go to the first page. That's how it was. This is how it ended up. So in general, just cleaning it up. Because this was meant to go to parents, this is fine. This gives you tips for talking to your doctor right there, a little more contact information. I personally might still get rid of this chunk about what parents need to know, because it's just a little bit extra and a little bit extra reading, and especially since it's what you open it to. I don't know if it's necessary or not. That's the kind of thing it would be great to do usability testing with, to find 10 parents to just take a look at this brochure and see what they found useful or interesting, what did they even bother to read. My concern with this is that this, which is good, gives you some tips for talking to your doctor, gets lost because there's just too much text. You know, they're not going to read all of it, so they'll probably skip the back. And this is what the inside ended up looking like. That to that. So some of the differences with that were we wanted to keep the same general look because it's been used for a while, and so doctors knew what to expect. And you know, if you completely overhauled the look, you're probably going to end up with something that people wouldn't recognize. That, you know, we wanted them to know what this was and to continue giving it out. So same general look, but you start to use the color in a way that supports each other. You keep the 5210 logo, because, you know, the logo art, because if that's the message you're trying to get across, you better keep hammering it home. It better be on every page. You want them to get that. Much shorter sections, keeping only the most important parts, got rid of some, you know, like quench your thirst, stuff like that. Kind of phrase some things in some more straightforward ways. And then the tip boxes, you know, they're the only things that really have much of a splash of color. Thoughts? Questions?
Yeah,
Anything?
So from teaching, I found that using light colors in text really washes out, and it gives
Yeah.
you never see it.
Yep.
So if you were going to use light colors, always outline it
Mhm.
with dark color. If you're using it for coordination.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would be good. That's the other kind of thing that, well, the usability testing is good for stuff like that too. If you have a couple different color schemes or use of color or no color that you want to try, have them read them both. Tell them what they think. and like I said, even a colleague who doesn't know anything about what you're doing can be useful in helping you sort through what seemed like an awesome idea and what's a dumb idea. So.
I did a workshop with children's television workshop on messaging and safety messages to kids. And one of the things they said is that they see the noun, they don't see what you put before it. So like reduce screen time, they would see screen time. Which,
yeah.
And I don't know.
Oh, that could be, yeah.
Because we had, don't look at the windows in an earthquake because they can be shattering. And they said what they'll do is look at the windows.
Yeah. Well, and some of that is the negative construction, because as much as possible you want to avoid negative constructions too. Because if you say, don't go to the railroad tracks, it's better to say keep away from the railroad tracks. It's just how our brains work. So the more you can avoid writing did I say that non-negatively? Don't write negative construction.
Yeah, we ended up looked at the floor.
Yeah.
Because that way they saw floor.
Yeah. So that, I think the negative construction is as much that.
So like under limit sweet drinks, you could have, I realize this is written as 5-2-1-0, but you could have drink water instead of sweet drinks.
Yeah, I just realized it was going against how they did their 5-2-1-0.
Yeah, oh it is, yeah. Well, some of it, honestly you get a lot of stuff from the state and feds and you got to work with it, and it may not be perfect for your audience and it may not be perfect for low literacy, because they do a very wide-ranging job of how good their low literacy writing or whatever is too. And some of it, there's just no one hard and fast rule for any of it. They might have usability tested all this stuff, I have no idea, so. And some too is like when you're creating brochures by committees, you're just going to end up with some stuff, and that's okay. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it can sure be a lot better. Oh, and this too, that after the grade level went down to 3.1 and the reading ease was 87. So, and remember that the reading ease and stuff doesn't take design into account at all. So that is just something you're going to have to judge on your own. All right, so one more thing we're going to do. This is a hepatitis C brochure that Colleen made for when she's working in infectious disease. And this is the gold standard because she recognized a need that she had people who are newly diagnosed with hepatitis C who badly needed some basic information, and it needed to be really simple to get. And they knew nothing, so it needed to kind of cover the whole gamut really simply, really easily. And she knew that she was going to have to go to a low reading level. And so she just went and did this, and this is what she turned out with. So it was great planning, good thinking ahead. And this is how it is. This got no editing from me. So there's some things I would maybe do different. Like I probably wouldn't do this as a graphic for that, just because it doesn't have that, anything in particular to do with it. But it's nice and clean, it's nice and simple. It's going to print out in black and white. She can print it out wherever she happens to be or on the fly, and it's going to work. So again, this is the cover, what you see at first, and the back. And she thought about that very carefully, that she wanted this really the first thing they saw. And then this is the inside, and there's many beautiful things about this. I mean, you could get rid of some of the all caps and all that. But this illustration is that's perfect for what you're supposed to do for medical illustrations. It actually, some people put like a cartoon liver or something. You wouldn't believe how much clip out there is of cartoon body parts out there. But this actually shows people, it's like, here's what I'm talking about on a body that looks like yours. So it's much easier to understand for somebody who might have Zippo knowledge of anatomy so that's an awesome illustration. It's very simple. She used only the number of words and sentences to make her point, and pretty much no more. And yet she somehow managed to work them all the way through. Here's what hepatitis C is for somebody who has never even thought about hepatitis C and didn't even know it existed, to what you might be at risk for and you better get tested. So it's a great, she did a great job. And it's a 4.4 grade level and reading ease of 82. So she completely hit all that too. Very nice, very good job, Colleen. She's a natural. Did you have any thoughts about that you? Okay, so now we're just going to quick and for fun go through because you can think about this for signs and stuff too. I took pictures of different stuff just randomly. I thought I had 3 minutes. I thought I'm going to take whatever I can take a picture of for 3 minutes, and then that's going to be what we'll talk about. And that's what I got. So all of them have strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk here. And this poster is in the environmental health waiting room. I don't even know I'm assuming it was a poster made for something else. I don't know who the original owner or the original audience was for this, but let's talk about it as if it's the general public. What would you do to make that a bit more low literacy? Or what's good about it? It's got some good strengths for that too.
I like the illustrations.
Yep, it's got some good illustrations. Some of them work really well. I love the chunks. The chunks are perfect, you know. If you just looked at this poster and you actually weren't interested in this, but you want to know about testing, you know exactly where to go. They work like signposts perfectly. Obviously, for a low literacy audience, you could probably skip the radon 222 decay, you know. But again, I think this was for the Board of Health or something. I do not think this was actually for a low literacy audience. But some of the pictures are great. Again, the same thing kind of shows you, like in your actual body, you can identify where that is. It isn't disconnected lungs. This you'd probably do differently so that you could see what it is. Maybe even you'd make a list, I don't know. Percentages maybe not necessary. Maps are good. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, you would definitely, you might do a different font that's a little bit easier to read. And one thing that you should know too, and one of the reasons I wanted to put this up here, oh gosh, when you've got the 4P capital CI/L, somehow you have to bring that down to human level if you're writing for low literacy audiences, and it's hard. Sometimes there just really isn't a way to do that.
It's picocuries per liter.
Yeah, I know. and so sometimes what you say is, we use a measurement level called this, and you don't explain it, and yours should be 4 or lower, you know, and that's good enough. And then that's the kind of thing that tweaks out your grade level. Oh, and this is kind of nice too. I mean, stuff like this is good too, where it's an illustration that actually shows exactly what you're talking about, kind of in a more realistic way than just like a collection of pipes or something. Okay, so this is not ours. This is EFNEP, which I can't even remember what that ever stands for.
Expanded Food Nutrition Education.
Thank you. Okay, so it's a food education program. Thoughts, strengths and weaknesses? It's actually very pleasant and eye-catching to look at and has a lot of white space. Those are great strengths for it.
Again, the white on black is difficult.
Yeah, it is a little difficult. I would do that differently.
Well, the acronym's a little off.
Yeah. Is that something that
What are we cooking?
clients know what that means?
No, they even call her the FNF lady.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's what it is federally. Like
If there was
that's
a logo, it might be better to just.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know if that's their logo or not,
Yeah.
but yeah, so some of it, that's one of the reasons I want to put this up here is like you got to think about that. I mean, you might not have to have it somewhere, but it might not need to be part of your title. That might not be important. The other thing to think about is like, that's a cool picture, and it kind of shows you that it's going to be about vegetables, I guess, but if it's a cooking class, it would be ideal to have it actually illustrate cooking. You know, just because that would be, again, a signpost. You're using your illustrations as a signpost for what this is about. But it's not, I mean, it's not bad. I like the not that many words. That's nice. I know. This one is funny because it's overwhelming because there's so many words, and yet if you look at it one by one, it's not bad. My feeling is that what this would need is a layout that didn't smush stuff together quite so bad. So piece by piece, not terrible, but the whole is tricky.
Could it also be organized into like divisions or sections?
Yeah, second floor. Yeah. 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 I know. Well, I think there was. Yeah.
So Joe, public street says, yeah.
Yep.
The public's looking for the alphabetical.
And this would be
Although it
an
could be alphabetical by floor.
Yeah.
Easily accessible.
Yeah.
There's too many C's, for instance, if you like.
Yeah.
By floors, that actually
Yeah.
helps a bit.
Well, and I don't know if everybody would look for conference room. They'd probably just look for room. So,
Yeah.
but the
I
yeah,
think the dash with like the HP is more for our own.
yes,
Nobody
yes.
externally is going to know HP.
Well, I think some of that came about when it became clear we weren't all using the reception desk. Then we have to have another reception desk behind the way, and there's a sign to it. So, but yeah, so some of it is just some of the weirdnesses of our building. But then we're passing them on to the people who come in the door. This would be a perfect and very easy usability test situation where you could have two exact signs and ask them to compare and tell you what they liked better.
Track how long it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we had trouble with emergency preparedness because it didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted FEP in because we have other FEP people that come in that would recognize that average.
Yeah.
It was just like,
And if 90% of the public's coming in for like a couple of things, or if there's
Mhm.
one desk for, people don't go to your cubicles for cancer
Right.
prevention, right?
Right.
So it seems like
Yeah, I think so too.
It's really confusing.
That's funny. Yeah, exactly. Good QI project on our sign. Nice fast one. Thoughts? This is just coming where you come in the entrance. It's on a little signboard.
Different heading.
Mm-hmm.
It's all capitals.
Mm-hmm. And actually, when you read a whole chunk of all caps, it's just hard to read, so people tend to skip. So if you have like one or two short words you can put in all caps, that works sometimes. That's fair. But the whole sentences of all caps, and honestly, then when you put your most important piece in all caps and smaller all caps, that's going to be missed. So it's just, this one just needs some reorganization and a little bit. And some of the constructions like this, like phoning / faxing, try to avoid them. They're tricky. It creates this big lump of a word. And it could easily just see, we can assist you in finding your records, or we can help you find your records even better. So
Sharon, how many people do you think read that?
Well, I was just gonna say, not very many. At the top, half the time they don't bring the records, but instead of attention, maybe it should say attention parents or parents speaking to a specific group.
Yeah.
Or even like something about immunization. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it could even, sometimes it can be a question, are you here for immunizations?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And that just is enough to make them stop and take a look.
The color is kind of off for me. Like, it's a little too much color for me.
Mhm.
Like it's a little too busy for me, and I would probably not do that decorative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or
It doesn't work as officials, it's trying to sound.
Yeah.
Color on there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the templates are mostly, I mean, they have their uses, but not very many of them. And they're meant to be super generic. So if you're talking about immunizations, it might be better to have, if you had anything at all, have something that was going to make sure that you knew this was about immunizations. So.
Big shot needle.
Yeah. And you don't have to use art. You don't have to use art or pictures. You just really don't. There's you can do a lot with just good fonts and good sizes and good design and layout, and you just don't have to do it. But we all do better than the professionals. That's the good news here. These signs are cool. It's cool that it has all this, but this is like a low literacy disaster right here because it's just too busy. I mean, I think if you kind of gave the welcome some more space and let it be in the middle more by itself, that would be great. And it's all right. It's not the end of the world, but this is busy. That's easy to read, Missoula City County Health Department. But the all caps, and it's kind of a funny font with very unfortunate spacing. This immunization got smushed. Health promotion got spread out. The sign up above the health promotion desk, it looks like health promotion is one word, so so if we don't always do it perfect, we should feel like we've done it so much better than people who are paid lots of money to do it. So anyway, I just thought that was funny when I saw those signs go up. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm doing a low literacy training later. Too late. Anyway, it's all right. It works. I like all the extra languages, but it does make it, the way they've designed it makes it look a little extra busy. So, yeah.
Is that designed by the architect? Or the
I don't know where that came from, and I don't know if it's, my bet is it's some kind of stock sign that you order. So I'm assuming that's where, but it works. It does good enough. All right, so that's it. Any questions at all? All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Go write awesome documents.
And then you want these at the back?
Oh yeah, if you would finish filling out the bottom part of that little survey, which should take you a minute at most, I would appreciate it. And just leave them on the table.